CSS borders. The CSS border properties allows you to specify the style, width, and color of an element's border. Without talking too much, let's get into this so you would know what a border is now. First, let's create our new document. I'll call this 003 border.html, and let me copy everything from background. The reason why we do it like this is so you can have something to refer back to. So I'll call this borders. Let's delete everything we have inside the style, and let's delete everything we have inside the body so we have a blank document. If we check this out in the browser, open border, let me close every other thing here. You see, we have a blank page. Now, how do we work with border? It's pretty straightforward. Let's begin. So to create a simple border, we could use, okay, let's begin this way. So let's create a div. I like to work with divs. So we create a div. Div means division. We will use div a lot when we start building, and a lot in this tutorial, and a lot when you start creating projects. So let's just say a border, okay? A border. And now that we have a border, let's check that in the browser. We have this a border, right? So let's go back. Now, we have to style it. And how do we begin? We can decide to give this a class or an ID. So let's say this div has a class of border, okay? So we can come up here and say dot border, okay? We can do all this on one line, so we can say border style and dotted. Reload, and you can see we have a new border on our page. So let me increase the zoom so you can see this. So now this border is a border. Okay, let's make it more descriptive. Let's say a or dotted border. Dotted border. Now there are different types of borders that we can create, so we would also look into every one of them. Okay, so there are dotted, there is dashed, there is a solid, double. Most times we'll be using the solid border. Okay, so let me duplicate this. Let's call this one dotted and dotted. Then let's duplicate this and let's call this a solid border. So this one will be solid. And solid. And here we will change this to solid and change this also to solid because the border style is going to be solid. So if we check this in the browser, you can see we have a dotted border at the top and we have a solid border right at the bottom. Okay, so there are also different types of borders that we can try out. So I'm just going to try to do this on I'm not going to create new div for these ones. I will just use everything right here. So let me comment this out and comment this out so we can just work with this. So now we have dotted border. Let's change this back to border. This is the essence of watching the video, and I believe you're writing something down. So now from dotted, we can also have dashed. So if we check how dashed border looks, if we reload, you can see it's like a dash. Just look at the border around it. It's like a dash. We also have double and groove. So let's try those ones. So if we say double, not here. You see, it's a double border now. And if we also try the next one called groove, but most times, guys, if you ever work with border, you would be working with the solid border. The border style solid, okay? So this is the one I'm talking about. This one, solid border, okay? So let's proceed. Now, with borders, you can also have width. So that is border width. And the border width is going to affect the thickness of the border. So if we want to give this border that we have now, we want to give it a width, all we need to do is to go in here. So let me delete what we have here. So we have one clean slate. I'll call this a border again, a solid border. Okay, let's have this on one line. Good. So we have border style. Next, we can have a border width. And you can use pixels or you can use words like thick, medium. So let's start with thick and see how this looks. You can see that's thick. But I don't like working with words, so I always prefer we work with pixels. So we can say 2 pixels. If we reload the page, you see. So you can go on and change the pixels to any numbers that you want. That's going to increase the thickness of the border for you. The next one is we can work with the border colors as stated here. So we can work with the border color. Now to change the color of the border, remember we've talked about colors before, right? Now we can do that to border. So border color, we can call this yellow. And let's see what we have in the browser. So you see, you can give it all sorts of colors that you want. We can also change it to red, so you know that it's not a static color. Red. And there you have it. We have a red border color. Okay. Now, everything we've typed looks pretty solid, but also we can create a shorthand. So instead of writing everything the way we've written it here, border style width color, we can have a shorthand and we just call this border. Okay, so border, and what do you start with? You start with the width. We want a 2 or let's use 3 pixels. Then you want the border style, so you want it to be solid. It could be solid, it could be dotted, it could be groove, but solid is the most common one. Then the color, so we can say green. Okay, so if I comment these ones up here out, you will see now that the shorthand is going to work perfectly for us. If I reload, you can see a 3 pixel border that is solid and is green in color. This is it on CSS border. But there is something else you would like to know, and that is what we call the border radius. So border radius is going to help you to add curves to the edges. You see right now they're looking sharp, right? We can make it curvy. And how do we do that? We say border radius, and you can say 5 pixel. Any figure would work. So if we say 5 pixel border radius and we reload this, you can see it's now curved. Okay, this is now curved. So guys, like I said before, this is it on CSS border. Let's proceed to the next item. The next item here is margin. Margins are important because they are used to create space around elements outside of any defined borders. So margins are important. And in margins, we have the margin top, the margin right, the margin bottom, and the margin left. So using this value we have here, the margin top is going to affect this side. The margin right is going to affect here. Look at my mouse. The margin bottom is going to affect here, and the margin left is going to affect here. So let's do this. Let's duplicate what we have here and create a new file called 004 margin.html, paste everything in, and let's change the title to margin. I'm going to delete everything we have here for the border. We can still maintain this. So let's change this to working with margin. Working with margin. So now we are trying to work with margin. Let me also take out the borders. Let's see if we would need them or not. Now, with margin, we can have a margin top. Okay, I'm not going to put in the figure yet. We can have a margin right. We can have a margin bottom, and we can have a margin left. Currently, our page looks like this. So let's go back here and open margin. You see, nothing, just pretty basic. If we go back here and we had a margin top, let's say 50 pixel, what happens? You can see it has been pushed 50 pixel from the top. That is margin in action. Margin right may not be visible right now because our element is on the left hand, so you won't see this margin yet. But what if we add a margin left to it from the corner? This side is going to affect here. So let's add a margin left. Okay, let's put a margin bottom of 100 pixel too. Now let's say the margin left we want is 500 pixel. Let's see what happens. You see, it has been pushed 500 pixel from the left. Also for margin, there is a shorthand. And the shorthand is just to say margin. Okay, margin, and you start with the top, 50 pixel, then to the right, 100 pixel, to the bottom, 100 pixel, and to the left, let's make it longer, 1000 pixels. Or let's make it 600 pixels. That feels too long. Now let's reload our page. I'm going to zoom in. Looks like it's smaller. If I reload this page, you can see the page has been moved again, working with margin, because now we have a margin that is 600 pixels to the left. If I inspect, let me inspect so that you can see what I'm saying. If I inspect and I try to check this, you can see what it is saying. You see our item is just right at the middle, and if you check it here, it says margin, and the breakdown is showing you margin top 50 pixel, 100 pixel, 100 pixel, and 600 pixel. So guys, this is it on CSS margin, and margin is going to be essential when we start building things. The next thing you need to learn after margin is what we've known as CSS padding. While margin helps to create space around elements, padding is used to create space around the content of an element. That is what is inside of an element. Okay, that is what margin does. So let's make this more descriptive. To make this work very well, let's create our new document called padding. I'll copy everything from margin and create 005 padding.html. Please guys, if I am too fast or you don't understand, just rewatch the video. It's descriptive, but it may just sound like I'm fast or I'm moving too quick. So padding. For padding, let's work with our borders, okay, so that we can see what is happening. So I don't need the border radius, so I'll just take that out. Let's work with a 2 pixel solid green. So let's change this to working with padding. I'm going to delete everything we have from margin. So we have a clean slate, right? So let's go to the browser and check this out. we're going to open the padding file. So I'll right click, open a new tab, close margin. Now you can see what we have on our screen. Let me zoom in. So we are working with padding, and you can see our elements is right inside of our tests. Working with padding is right here, and we gave it a border. And just like margin, we also have padding top. Okay, we have padding right, we have padding bottom, and we have padding left. Remember, padding gives space between the content of an element. Okay, so if we give it a padding top of, let's say, 10 pixel, what happens with what we have on our screen? Let's see it. If I reload, you can see there is now a space between the content of the elements and the space around it. This is what padding does. So if we go back in and give different paddings, so let's say we want 5 pixel to the right, we want 20 pixel to the bottom, and we want 15 pixel to the left. If we reload the page, you will see what happens. This is padding at work. You can see this is the content, the entire content. This is it. But now, padding is going to give a distance between the content of an element and the element itself. That is padding. So just to repeat that again, padding is used to create space around the element content inside of a border. So remember, we have a border and this is the content. So padding has given space around it. That is how padding works. And also, there is a shorthand for padding. And this is it. Padding, okay, then we can start from the top, 10 pixel, 5 pixel for the right, 20 pixel for the bottom, and 15 pixel for the left. So we can comment what we have at the top and use the shorthand. Okay, now if we reload, you see we still have the same thing. So that is the shorthand. Instead of writing padding left, padding top, padding right, and padding this and that, there is no need for that. Okay, and also so this first value here is for top, this one is for bottom, sorry, right, bottom, and left. Okay, so take note of that. Take note of that. So guys, this is it on CSS padding, and I believe it was very descriptive for you. Okay, but if we have three values here, let's say we have 20 pixels, just 10 pixels, this one in the middle is going to be for right and left. Okay, this now will be for top, this will be for right and left, and this will be for bottom. Let's see it. So you can see the padding right and the padding left, but you can't see the padding right because this text does not cover the entire page. Okay, but just to keep it simple, I like to work with 4. If you don't want padding for any place, just make it 0. Same thing with margin. So if I make that one 0 at the top, you see there is no padding at the top. So let's proceed to the next one. The next item for us is CSS height and width. CSS height and width is actually very, very important in whatever we're going to be doing, because you need to be able to give item height and you need to be able to give them width. So we can set height and we can set width. So let's go back in and create our new items. So I'm going to copy everything we have here and I will create a new document. I'll call this 006. I'll call this height width.html. Yeah, that's number 6. So I drop everything in, then I change the title of this document to height and width. So let me delete everything we have here so we can just, start afresh. Good. Check it on our browser to ensure that we are on track. Close the padding file. Reload this, height and width. Good, blank. Now, the CSS height and width properties are used to set the height and width of an element. And let's get this done, right? So previously, we created a simple div. So let's work with a div again. So I'm going to say div, then I'll say this element will have an height and width. Well, currently that's not true because it doesn't have it. If we check it on the browser, you see it's just there. Now, let's give it an height and width. And to make it obvious, we will start with a background color. Since we only have one div on this page, we can just say div, that is using the name of the tag to target it. Let's give it a background color of red. So let's see that. That works. Let's change the color of the text. So let's say color white. This is going to change the color of the text inside of the div to white. Good. This is working. Now, how do we add height and width? Very simple. You use the property name height. We can give it a height of 400 pixels. And let's see if this works truly. You can see we now have a height of 400 pixels. Also, it is covering the entire page. We can give it a width as far as we want. So we can say width of, let's say, 400 pixels again. And let's reload this to see what we have. Now you can see we have a height of 400 pixels and a width of 400 pixels. In short, what we've created here is called a square, because with a square, you have equal sides on every side of the shape. So this is a square with 4 sides and it has equal sides. So you see, you can add height and width to any element. So if you see, if I want to go on, I can make the width probably 600. Reload this page. And there you have it. The height and width has taken shape already. Okay. So basically, guys, this is it on adding height and width to the elements of your document. So you can also apply this to any block level element, height and width. And we can also change the color because, like I said, the color is just to make it look very obvious. But if you can, anticipate already, you can get an idea of building some web pages with this already, probably redesigning your projects. So let's say we want to make this pink. And there you have it, height and width and color. So you can create different divs on the page and yet you have the same height and width affecting them. So let's proceed. The next thing we want to talk about is the CSS Box Model. You see, all elements can be considered as boxes. If you remember when we gave our element a border, you see the way it came out like a box. That is just it. All elements are like boxes. So in CSS, the term box model is used when you're talking about design and layout. Remember, CSS is all about designs and layouts, and that is what we're talking about here. So the CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. Your div is wrapped around with a box model. So your div is a box, your p tag is a box, you understand? And they consist of margins, borders, and padding, and the actual content. Okay, so remember right here we had this this element will have an height and width. This is the content. Okay, this is the content. So when you have your content, you have the padding. Remember from padding, we said the padding is the space between the content and the border. That is your padding. Okay. Then your border is what separates your content from the margin. And the margin is what separates the content, your element, from other elements on the page. So this is an illustration, an image to make you see it. But we can also create something quickly so that you will understand what we are talking about here. So let's go back in and create another document. We'll call this box model. So this is going to be 007. And this will be box model.html. Let's change the title to box model. We will actually use the same thing. So right here, I will revert back to background of red. Then I will leave the color the same. Now these are what I want us to see. So now first we want to give this item a border. Remember the shortcut? Border of, let's say, let's make this 5 pixel. Okay. Let's make the border solid and let's make it a yellow border. Let's make it green. Let's see if green is going to work well. Now padding. If you give it one padding, it's going to affect all the sides. So let's give this padding of 40 pixels. It's going to affect all the sides. And let's give it a margin of, let's say, 30 pixels, which is also going to affect all the sides. So we are doing this because I want us to see the box model in action. So I'll change this to box model, CSS box model. When you have understanding of this, you will be able to, when you look at any element on any page, you would know why it is behaving the way it is behaving. So let's get this out. So box model, open that. So box model now is open. Okay, let me change our border is not very visible. So let's give it a border of, let's make it black. Let's make it 10 pixels so that it looks thick. I want to explain box model practically. Good. So now I've zoomed in. Now you can see this is our content in the middle. What is separating this content from this border is the padding, this whole area. And what is separating this border from the browser is the margin. If I inspect, you will see this now. This is the content. Can you see what has happened to our entire page? Our content is in the middle. You can see, even on your browser, you can actually see it. So the browser is showing you at the top, at the bottom right corner. The content is in the middle and the padding is 40 pixels. The border is 10 pixels and the margin is 30 pixels. It is the margin that is separating it from the browser. The border is the black box that is covering the content, and the padding is what is separating the content from the black box, and the content is what we have in the middle. So this is CSS model in action. So any content on your page behaves like this. So when you see space between a content and the container, know that padding is taking place. When you see a border around, you know that is a border. And when you see that your content is moving away from the browser, know that margin is taking place or margin is working. Okay, so a quick recap. All HTML elements can be considered as boxes. Don't forget that. And in CSS, the box model is used when you're talking about design and layout. I know this sounds or looks boring, but it is important you know this because going forward, we are going to be doing a lot of margins and borders and paddings. And it is important that you can understand this properly. So guys, In the next video, the next lesson, we'll be talking about CSS tests. CSS tests has a lot of properties for formatting. So we are going to look into all that when we get into the next chapter.